Corona pandemic has really taken over, and today's topic is going to be coronavirus and the equity gaps it has exposed. So thank you for joining. This is a great moment to tag a friend in so that they can join in. My co-host, who is Miss Jen Owen from Co-Created. And so we are so excited for today's live. Morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm up, I'm moving, I'm good. How are you?
About the same. Hanging in there. Taking it one day at a time.
It's so funny because every time I get on live, like this is literally the conversation we need to have first. Like, how are you? Are you okay? Are you still making it? And the resounding thing is like one day at a time.
Right? Like, how are you really? That's the question.
Yeah, well, let's start there then. How are you really? Everyone else that's tagging in and watching, how are you really? I'm asking you, Jen.
Oh, goodness. A mess? How about that? Is that an okay thing to say? A whole mix of things. I'm, grateful for my health. That's one. I'm, overwhelmed by the uncertainty we're in right now. That's another. Working on how to do business when you are trying to serve schools and schools are out of business right now. They are working from home. The struggle is real, and, just feeling for teachers and students and families right now. So yeah, a mix, a big old mix. What about you?
I thank you for your honesty and vulnerability. This is most definitely the platform where we're going to keep it all the way real. Like, not everything is great and not everything is peaches and cream. Someone else just said, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around this whole pandemic. And I think I don't have time to BS anybody. Like, this is crazy. This is hard. Some days are better than others, and some moments are better than others. But I can say that I am in a grounded place this morning. I hit my meditation. I spent my time, in the Word this morning with him. So that was helpful. And then I went out for a run. So all of those things have got me feeling good. But I'm sure in like 3-4 hours, I might be back in like panic mode again. Who knows? We'll see.
So maybe not even day by day. It's like hour by hour.
Literally hour by hour. And I just want to encourage everyone who is watching to know that, like, it's okay to feel out of sorts. Like, I would think you're weird if you don't feel out of sorts during a pandemic. Like, it's probably not normal to be at 100% normal. It's okay to be feeling a myriad of things. But we're super excited because me and Jen are here today to talk to y'all about coronavirus and the equity gaps it has exposed. Because it's uncovered a lot. Someone else watching just said, sometimes it's even minute by minute. And I think that's true.
Yes.
It's definitely not linear. It's not in a straight line. It's sorted. And we're all just doing the best that we can. And I think if we remind ourselves of that, we'll be able to give ourselves more grace.
Yep. So
agreed.
So let's jump in. I'm going to pose the first question to you. Jen, tell the audience just a little bit about you and the work that you do so they kind of know, why I'm coming to you to talk about all things equity.
Sure. So I was very excited to be a part of this topic in particular because my work is very much devoted to this concept. So Co-Created is a teacher training service all around equity. So closing equity gaps in the classroom, helping teachers develop those research-backed practices that help do that. So we focus on 4 areas. They are rigor, student empowerment, inclusion, and support, and just helping teachers develop strategies to use those and to reach all learners in the classroom.
So y'all obviously can see why I went to Jen. Clearly, she is an expert in her own right, and I so appreciate you being available for this. But let's dig in. Our topic is coronavirus and the equity gaps it's exposed. So what equity gaps have you noticed with this pandemic?
Yeah, so I think the ones that come to mind first, probably for everyone, are, the food access gaps. I think we've all started to see through this experience, what a vital role the schools play in closing those food access gaps for our kids. I think it's probably been eye-opening for people to see how many children, even just in Atlanta public schools alone, are in need of these services, are in need of the food delivery, the food bank partnerships, the lunch grab and go programs, all of it. So I think that's a big one that's come to light. I think it was New York City public schools. What was that astounding number that they gave of like how many kids are without food if schools are out? It was something that was like truly shocking.
I don't recall the number, but I did see one percentage that was like upwards of 70% of this country relies on school for meals. It's real. Yeah.
Right. So that's like an equity gap that I'm glad the public is seeing, that schools close on a regular basis, you know. A few others that have kind of come to light is obviously like poverty, you know, like people who are living in poverty are experiencing this pandemic in a very different way than people who have the resources they need, right? So if you have, you know, if you're living in poverty, you might have 1, 2 more jobs. You might be having to still continue going to work despite the fact that there's a pandemic, because you have to support your family, you have to survive. So many of our students and families are living that reality right now. And I think that just in the midst of a pandemic, that has become like painfully obvious.
Yeah, I even think about like access to internet. Mm-hmm. You know, these companies haven't started offering free internet for no reason, and it's because it's exposed this issue of like many working parents, many parents that come from underserved communities may not have access to internet. And so now they're like, you can have internet. But again, if I don't have the device, you giving me free internet doesn't necessarily allow my child to engage on this new like digital learning platform that's being created.
Exactly. So then the next thing we've been seeing, you know, is schools jumping in to provide the devices. And so there is a huge technology access gap, and it's twofold. It's the access to the device itself, and then it's the access to the internet connectivity to be able to use it. So I'm grateful to be seeing these internet providers stepping in, and it has been encouraging to see schools saying, all right, we've got the devices ready, like families come and get them, we're going to make it happen. You know, schools have been doing so much to just make learning happen on the fly. Like, it's incredible, and it's a huge ask. So
it is. I think, you know, it is an opportunity to like commend all the teachers and all the schools who are literally like solving problems in real time. Like, oh, schools are closed, let's come up with a way to teach you. Oh, you don't have internet, let's advocate to these companies and get them to, you know, share their resources. Oh, you don't have a computer, we can solve that too. And it really undergirds how much schools are like the fabric, the staple in our communities. And I think for too long, they've like been ignored in a lot of ways. So it's nice that we're seeing education and teachers get the respect that they honestly deserve.
Absolutely. And going back to a point you made just a moment ago, like I mentioned, we've got families who are living in poverty. We've also got families everywhere in between, from the haves to the have-nots. We've got lots of in between, in the middle working families. And I know for you, Claudine, like you're a working mom, like you're trying to balance the whole, like, let me do my job and let me be a mom, let me wear all the hats. And so can you just talk to us a little bit about that experience and how that's been for you? Because I'm sure you speak for a lot of moms out there in that way.
First, I'm going to name like my privilege. You know, I'm college educated at this point. You know, I feel like having a home is a privilege in this day and age. Like, I want to name all the privileges I have, because by no means do I ever want to come across as like, woe is me. But the reality is it's still hard. And I'm a former educator. So in this new pandemic world, that's a privilege. Like, being able to have the expertise to be able to teach my son is a privilege, and not everyone has that. In fact, most people don't have that. Despite all of that privilege, it's really taken a toll on me as a working parent, because I run my own business, Restore More. We consult with schools and organizations about social emotional wellness. And so trying to run a full-time organization and teach, and my son is 4, so context, right? 4-year-olds need a lot of hand-holding. This is not like I can put him on a device and he's good to go. I really have to be by his side. And so I think I even underestimated, like, oh, this is an all-day thing. Like, it takes a lot of time. And so last week was chaotic. It was up in the air. I was trying to figure it out. I made him a schedule. I've had to, like, scrap that schedule and adjust it, honestly, to be, like, more age-appropriate. Because we were doing way too much. We were trying to do like 8 hours of instruction. Nobody has time for that. And that's not even like it's
reality
laughable.
check.
It's laughable. I laughed at myself when I really like processed what we were trying to do. But I think that, you know, this pandemic has revealed for us that like
Yep.
we're not in it alone. There's a lot of other folks going through the same thing, and it does make me appreciate the schools that are providing some sort of resources, because as a parent of a 4-year-old, like, the preschool program did not provide a daggone thing. They were like, all right, we'll be closed until, keyword,
I was actually
until.
going to ask you about that. I was wondering that, like at that early childhood level, you know, that's different. Are any of our early childhood programs and preschools providing anything? I'd love to hear from some other parents on that too.
Yeah, I in talking with friends who have similar aged kids, a lot of us are on our own. If they were in kindergarten, then they did probably, like most of my friends did get like packets and things of that nature.
Sure.
But in that early childhood realm, like 4 and under, you're now having to come up with like toddler activities, which can take a lot of prep, which can take a lot of time, and we're working it out. Like, we are trying to not aim for perfection, but aim for consistency. And so it's again, one day at a time. I do want to lift up this statement that someone else shared, because I think it's interesting. They said, let's talk about the fact that people have a certain privilege to be able to access the internet. She said that her school is providing devices, but she works in an area with a high undocumented population, and ICE is still doing arrests. That's so frustrating. First of all, I'm sorry.
Right. What a misalignment of priorities right now. That's what comes to mind for me is the, you know, like,
So what
I want more from our government. As a citizen, I want more from our government. I want them focusing on the things that are going to help the most people. You know, like, let's prioritize here. That's just a shame. That's a shame to hear.
Yeah, I am literally, clearly, like, at a loss for words, and that doesn't happen often.
So I'm rewatching it.
The fact that that is even still something that families have to deal with. It was bad enough when it was happening. Let me be clear on my stance. But to think that amidst all of what is going on, I still have this threat of potentially being removed, deported. I can't imagine what those families are going through. And another really good point that someone just shared was like, what about the parents that have past due bills, right? So they can't access the free internet. So, like, you know, let's say I've gotten behind and like internet was one of the first things to go because it's not always a priority. And so I've gotten rid of my internet, and now all of a sudden you're telling me, oh, we'll offer it for free, but not you, because you owe whatever the amount is. Like, is it really as equitable as we want to believe?
Sure. And just thinking about that point again about ICE, and I don't want to get too political, but at the same time, I know that in education, there's no such thing as neutral. And when we think about, you know, the political climate we're in, and there's talks about closing borders, it's sometimes you have to wonder, like, are we using this situation, or is our government using this situation to push certain political agendas? So, you know, just a reminder for us as citizens to be aware, to be engaged, to contact representatives as needed, because we do still have a voice, and pandemic or not, it's not acceptable for them to be pushing policies through that take advantage of people.
And I think it just, you know, teaching is political because we work with the babies that it affects, right? So teaching is always political. But I feel like this would be the time where you might try to get a seedy agenda in because everyone is in such a flurry, right? Everyone is in such a tizzy. So what an opportune time to try to sneak in some shady business. And I think I love your charge for us to stay focused as educators and as citizens, keep our eye on the ball and not lose sight of like what our political leaders are doing, because we all know if no one is watching.
So I wrote in her title as well.
Yeah, who knows what'll happen. Someone else just shared, even the free access is limited based on documents parents are asked to supply. Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, I've seen that. It's like, okay, yes, we offer free internet, but now you've got to like prove it. So I saw that with another organization, like ABC Mouse was offering a free month. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, my son actually uses ABC Mouse. I was going to try to sign up for the free month. I was like, this is great. But then to get the free month, it said that you had to print a form, privilege. You had to bring the form to the school, dangerous. And then you had to have the, right? Then you had to have the school fill it out and send back on behalf of the kid. I was like, okay, who has time for that? And again, I've named my privilege. So even if I'm like, wow, that doesn't seem safe or responsible, what are families who have less means grappling with in this time? Like, it's just so unprecedented. And I think that's why it's important to really talk about these equity gaps and peel back the layers, because you can put out a flyer and say I have free services, but what are the barriers that you as an organization have put in place that make it not so free?
Absolutely. And the point you made about layers, like for us to really dig in and talk about the nuances here, right? You know, like it's not just like, yay, free internet for all. It's, well, what about the documentation required and how that impacts undocumented families? What about the people who might be behind on bills and how that impacts it? So it's complex. Like we have to be accepting the complexity of the issue and digging into those nuances.
Yeah. Someone just said, thank you for naming your privilege. Look now, I think I grew up as a very unprivileged person, but as I have amassed, education and different levels of success, I think it's always important to point out your privilege. One, because it normalizes it and it helps other people who are maybe less open to doing so do it. But also to share, we recognize the seats that we sit in now versus the children that we were. And if we can't model naming privilege, then how can we expect others to do it?
Totally agree. I'm so glad you made that point. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So my next question for you, there was this amazing quote going around by Angela Watson. And so she said, it was on a cornerstone for teachers on the changes schools are trying to implement based on COVID-19, right? And so the quote said, if schools can simplify the curriculum, cancel standardized testing, and put kids' social emotional wellness first right now, why can't we always do that?
Yes. When I read that newsletter this month with that quote from Angela Watson, I saw that same one and it just knocked me off my feet. That is so much truth right there. I'm just going to say it again, that same quote. If schools can simplify the curriculum, they can cancel standardized testing. They can put kids' socio-emotional wellness first right now. Why can't we always do that? So right now we are seeing schools focusing on the stuff that matters and getting rid of the stuff that doesn't. And I hope, my deep down hope for this is that maybe, just maybe, this could lead to lasting change. That maybe we will see a day where after weathering this storm together, we're able to reimagine, rethink, what could education look like that serves all kids better? And I love that she brought that point up because, yes, we're in the midst of a crisis. And sometimes through a crisis, you also have opportunities to reinvent, to rethink, to reimagine. So I love that she issued that challenge to educators.
So for those of you that are tuned in, give us a thumbs up if they have done away with your state testing this year, or if you still have state testing this year. Because here in Georgia, they have abolished state testing. And I think it was a really strong move by our superintendent, our state superintendent, Dr. Woods. And his general sentiment was teachers have enough to worry about. I'll be daggone if they're going to worry about testing and accountability measures. So, the teacher evaluation system that we use, which is called TEACS, they've thrown it in the trash for this year. The standardized tests that we take here, which are called milestones, they've thrown them in the trash here. Okay, so I was so curious to see, are other systems getting rid of standardized testing as well? Awesome. Most of our viewers are saying, yes, no state testing. Because who has time to be worried about state testing when the world has literally, been shaken and it's still shaking?
Right.
Yeah.
Going back to your question of why did it take a pandemic to get here, sometimes, I've heard the word crisis defined as to sift. You take this situation that happens, crisis, the root word is to sift. So we pour in all the stuff that's going on, shake it out, and what remains is the stuff that's most important. And that's what we're going through right now, is that sifting. And so all the stuff that's fallen out, all that sand, the state testing has fallen out, that high stakes environment has fallen out. The focus on academics over social emotional has fallen out, and we're left with those essentials. So I think our challenge next is holding on to those essentials even after this crisis passes.
I love that. Like etymology, which is just the study of words. Like I love breaking down that word, and that visual is so clear to me of like, we've overloaded our bucket of education with some things that are not helpful for students. And I used to tell myself, the day that I feel like I'm in an institution that is not making decisions that are best on behalf of children, I'm out, yo. And I've had to leave organizations because I felt like, oh, we're making decisions that are in the best interest of parents, or in the best interest of politicians, or in the best interest of teachers, but not in the best interest of kids. And I'm just the type of educator that always wants to put kids at the forefront. And I feel like this crisis has at least allowed us to really assess, like, what are the things that are most crucial to the kids? And it is like learning, right? But then also I'm seeing teachers find these amazing ways to engage with their kids, whether it's like going live on IG and teaching a lesson, or I saw a PE teacher, post a video on YouTube, or I saw one school had like a Friday celebration rally and they did it all online. So I love that teachers are still prioritizing like social emotional wellness in addition to the learning. And you're really seeing like, okay, what is the real priority? Someone said, girl, I'm in the process of leaving my school right now for that exact same reason. And I just want to give you, some encouragement. Know that on the other side of it, it'll be okay. And there are schools that are going to match what you're looking for, where everyone is, holding high expectations, where everyone has similar beliefs. But if you feel like, okay, the school I'm at right now is not operating in the best interest of the kids, it's just time to make a move, because what good, right? Like, what actual good can you do in a space when you don't believe in the decision making? Yeah,
and I just want to say, like, how much I commend you on your courage, because living out your values requires courage. So good for you taking that stand and for making that change for yourself and for being true to what you believe in.
Yeah, man.
So Claudine, while you were speaking about what's best for kids, I also was thinking about, balancing that with what's best for teachers too, because we have to take care of the people that are taking care of the kids, right? And I know that through this whole thing, teachers have been heavily impacted with this heavy lift and with this expectation to suddenly pivot and suddenly, do teaching and learning in this whole new way. And teachers have risen to the occasion, because teachers are the kind of people that make it happen. So I think, go teachers, you're incredible. Also, we see you, we see this struggle, and we are here, like, let us know whatever you need, whatever we can do. But it kind of has brought this question to mind about, like, through this whole crisis, whether within a school or not, who do you think are those who will thrive through all of this, and who will be set back through all of this? And I'm sure it is a complicated, multifaceted answer.
Yeah. So I first want to address, like, the teacher's best interests, and I think no matter what industry you are in, right, whoever is on the front lines doing the work needs to be supported and taken care of. I was an assistant principal. I did that work for 6 years. I managed teachers. I managed teams. And at the end of the day, in terms of like my priorities, it was always like students, teachers, everyone else. Students, teachers, everyone else. And that means as a leader, you got to take stock of how your teachers are feeling. You've got to assess them. You've got to support them, and really meet them where they are. I think, unfortunately, in a lot of settings, like, leaders do not have a servant leadership mindset, and I'm just going to name it, and that's not every school, but we have far too many folks in leadership positions that want to shine themselves rather than shine the light on the teachers and the kids, because those are the people doing the work every day, not you leaders sitting in your office. Like, you're doing stuff, but you've got to uplift the people that are doing the service. Just like right now, you see the doctors and the nurses and the medical industry going to bat for us, and those are the people we need to uplift, encourage, and support. And so I just think as a leader, it's always important to be a servant leader, because that's the best position to really like grow and make lasting change. But your question about who will thrive during this and who will be set back during this, I mean, I think it's abundantly clear, and it's so disheartening. But the people that will thrive will be families that are more affluent, because of the systematic racism in this country, that often means Caucasian white families will thrive during this. Their students are more often than not used to engaging in digital learning platforms. They have access funds to be able to go to like enrichment camps and things of that nature. And so they're used to engaging in unique ways. And so when I think about who will be set back, by no means do I want to indicate like every person of color will be set back, because that's limited thinking, right? But I do recognize that the most underserved in this country will be set back. The folks who struggle the most financially will be set back, because while some companies are saying like, oh, give us a call and we'll put your bill on hold so that you don't have to pay this month. Okay, if in a month all things clear up, now I owe $200 instead of $100. Where does that come from, right? Especially if I couldn't work, like where does the extra money come from? So I genuinely believe that the people who are going to be set back are the people who can like least afford it. And oftentimes those are people that look like me. So it is communities of color. It is our undocumented brethren. It is, students who are living in poverty. Those are going to be the folks that get set back. And those of you that are watching, like, who do you think is going to be set back most after this pandemic? Like, who are the people who are going to be digging themselves out of a hole? And I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be the wealthy. I believe that they have systems. I believe they have safety nets. And those are all luxuries. Those are all privileges that many of us don't have. Like, the average American doesn't have, oh my God, this stat, like, blew me over the other day. The average American does not have more than $400 set aside for an unexpected expense. So the average American, if I get maybe like a flat tire, I might be able to cover that. But beyond that flat tire, if I get anything else out of the blue, if I get anything else out of the ordinary, anything more than $400, I'm now set back financially, and I might be looking at payday loan services, which we know are incredibly predatory. I may be, asking family to borrow, who also might be strapped. And so I really believe the folks that are going to be set back and most affected by this are the people who probably like deserve it the least.
Yes. Yeah.
Crazy.
I know. And I don't want to stay too focused on like the doomsday stuff, even though it's so true. And like, I so respect that you brought up the fact that it is people of color that are going to be disproportionately affected, and that in the society we live in, unfortunately, socioeconomic status and race go hand in hand far too often. So those who are affected by poverty and people of color are going to be affected. So that is the truth we're living in. And, I think a lot of times in these moments, sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I think, well, what can I do? This is a big deal. This is a big problem. What can I do? And so I've been trying to follow more and more organizations that are doing the work, that are getting out there. And some of the ones I've noticed that I just want to kind of shine a light on that are a bright spot out there are Love Beyond Walls. I donated to them this week because they are putting out hand washing stations supporting the homeless population. Because if you're without a home experiencing homelessness, where are you going to wash your hands? So I love that they are taking like such a realistic approach and doing something so practical. I love what Atlanta Food Bank is doing to partner with the Atlanta Public Schools. I love what Gooder is doing, the way that they are redirecting the produce into places that need it. What a really cool model they've got. So I'm thankful for the people out there who are making a difference for the communities that need it most.
So I just got the chills because it reminded me of like Mr. Rogers. Like, when the world is going wrong, look for the helpers. Like, there will always be helpers. No bull. Like, you've got to look for the people who are trying to add more good into the world instead of more bad at a time like this. And it's so nice to see some of the good in the world, and we've got to start paying more attention to it. And I think, in the vein of like staying hopeful, if we continue to watch what our politicians are doing, especially during this time, then we can continue to hold them accountable. And so just like really staying focused, because like I said, this would be the time they would try to insert said shady business, especially if we're not watching or we're distracted. I want to close this out.
We have to be active, engaged citizens. And I want to draw like a subtle but important distinction between being political and being civically engaged. Like, we are, as citizens, like, it's our duty. Like, we need to be calling our representatives. We need to be making our voices heard. And when they are doing things that are shady, that are not in the best interest of the people, then we got to call them out. So that's our civic duty.
I totally agree with you. Oh, no problem. Someone is saying thank you so much for facilitating this. We appreciate you being here. We're going to close out with this question that is going to help us get to a little bit more of a lighter question, and also encourage folks to see what else they might be able to do. So one of the questions that we didn't really get to is this idea that some folks are being asked to grade things right now. Give us some thumbs up if you have to grade things right now. So you're teaching digitally and your district or your school is requiring you to actually grade some of the work. So thumbs up if you have to grade stuff, thumbs down if you don't. And so one of the questions we were thinking about was
and I have
is grading even equitable right now? If we know some kids have access and we know some kids don't because of no fault of their own, is grading even an equitable practice? Okay, I've seen 2 thumbs up already. So that's telling me that yes, you're still required to grade. And so the question I want to pose to you here, Jen, is how can teachers practice equity with digital learning? This is your bucket. What can we do?
So I'm going to put out one of my maybe more controversial views, I guess, is that is grading ever equitable? What does grading do to learning? So if the point of schools is learning, we want kids learning. So how can we motivate them to learn? How can we help them become intrinsic learners, who want to learn? The answer is not through grading. That's an extrinsic motivator, and it's often a fear-based one in a lot of ways. So I wonder if this is an opportunity for us to rethink that. There are schools out there who are doing more standards-based grading, where it's a student is getting feedback based on, did I meet the learning goal I set out to meet? That's a step in the right direction. There are schools that have thrown out grading altogether. I'm part of some cool Facebook discussion groups where teachers talk about the ways that they're giving meaningful and realistic feedback to their students instead of grading. So I guess what I would push on that is was grading ever equitable? So especially zero-based grading, there's so much great research out there now on why a 0 is something that should not be a part of a grade book. And I would encourage everybody to kind of look into some of that really great research. There's mathematical reasons, there's social justice reasons, there's a lot. So grading itself is a big topic. And I think during this time, it's almost it feels silly. It's how can we be grading someone's work when everyone's in survival mode? We're at home in the middle of a pandemic. Who cares if I got a 90 or a 60? That seems so trivial. So I don't know. I feel for teachers that are having to do that because it's not the teacher's fault. They're doing what they're asked to do. So that's my controversial take. So to answer the second part of your question, though, about what can teachers do to promote equity even when we're in this once-in-a-lifetime situation in the midst of a pandemic, doing quarantine, doing learning at home. And I would separate that out into, what's within the teacher's control and then what needs to be handled at the school level, at the district level, at the policy level, right? Because we can't put it all on teachers. I'm always being an advocate for teachers, you can't be expected to do it all. Here's what is within your control. So some tips that I would offer for teachers just within their sphere of influence would go along with the 4 pieces that Co-Created is built on, our 4 pillars. So the keys that I think create an equitable classroom are that it's rigorous, it's inclusive, it's supportive, and it's empowering. So every assignment, teachers, that you're putting out there, ask yourself, is this assignment rigorous? And I've got this more than one test that you can use to decide if an assignment is rigorous. So when you're putting it out there, ask yourself, does this assignment require students to do more than one step? Does the assignment end up having more than one right answer? And will it take them more than one work session to finish? And if you can say yes to those 3 questions, that's a simple way to increase the rigor of your assignment.
You made that seem so easy with those little steps. I was like, oh, yes. That made it super easy.
Not to oversimplify depth of knowledge in Bloom's taxonomy. Like, obviously, those are very complex. There's a lot there. But teachers, we're in survival mode. So do your more than one test, like use those tools that are really practical. A couple others I would throw out there for teachers, like when you're creating an assignment and you want to make it inclusive for all learners, look into universal design. Like, I cannot emphasize UDL, universal design for learning, enough. Think about different ways that your students are going to be engaging with the content. How are you going to draw them in? Think about how they're going to be accessing the new knowledge. So think about multimodal. Is it auditory? Is it visual? Is it kinesthetic? Is it tactile? Is it experiential? And then finally, think about the output. How are students showing their learning? So this is where you can incorporate choice boards. Like, what are some of the different ways a student can show their learning? They could video record, audio record, type it out, voice to text. Like, there's so many ways students can show their learning beyond just a paper and pencil test. So those are just a couple quick hitters for teachers to think about, because it's a huge job. It's a hard job. And, I want to be a resource. Please reach out if you need someone to bounce ideas around for how to make instruction equitable, I'm here.
So dope. You're such a gem. I'm like, so many nuggets. I'm like, this is good. So we will wrap with just sharing a couple of resources that we have been creating, ultimately, like, to help our audiences out. And so one thing that we've created at Restore More, again, our whole work is about social emotional development for not only children, but educators. And so we have put together a Corona circle script. And so it's a restorative circle script that allows you to sit down with the people in your home, the people that you are quarantined with, and process this thing in like a healthy and constructive way. And so we are sharing that. It is absolutely free. If you're interested, go ahead and just DM me your email and I will send it to you within 24 hours, if not a lot sooner. But we want to encourage folks to talk about this thing in a healthy way versus a fear-based way. And it is written in a way that it is accessible to children. So I encourage you to like sit in a physical circle with your littles or with the people you are living and dwelling with, have a talking piece, and really start unpacking this, because it's carrying an emotional burden for many of us. And if we don't process it outwardly, it's going to manifest in other ways. And so we just wanted to be able to provide a resource. Are there any resources that you all have at Co-Created that would be beneficial to folks right now?
Sure. So just thinking about this topic in particular around equity. So we do offer just a free ebook. It's like 25 pages, very practical, like flip through it. And it just puts the definition of equity into really accessible terms, because I think that's a term we throw around a lot, but it's important to really, really know what it means. So check that out. You can look at it on my Instagram, on my website. You can email me however you want. I will make sure that you get that. Again, it's a free ebook. So, and I just remembered there was one more quick tip I wanted to offer teachers that I forgot just a minute ago. Can I throw that in there?
Sure.
Okay, so thinking about when you are doing remote learning, one way to think about whether an assignment is empowering for students is asking yourself, who is directing the learning? Is it the learner or is it the computer? So are students using that technology to create something, or are they just following directions on a screen? So always ask yourself, who is directing it? Who is in charge? Who has the power? Is it the learner or is it the technology? So making sure that you're being conscious of that.
Yeah, those are such great points. Thank you so much for being willing to have this conversation. I think it's needed. And we just want to continue to be a platform where we are discussing some of the tough stuff, but doing it in constructive ways, because we all need help processing this beast. We will be back tomorrow at noon with a new guest. I will be dropping who that is momentarily. So thank you all for checking in. I'm seeing some of the same folks, and I love that we're just like building community around like quality instruction and social emotional learning and supporting one another. So y'all take care. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands, which I'm sure you all have been doing anyway, right? This is mostly educators, so we're real good at following directions. But y'all stay safe. Jen, thank you so much for joining me, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.